Okay, so firstly, how did you discover IVETA and what were your motivations for becoming a member?
It was a number of years ago. I was actually in Fiji for a conference. It was an IVETA conference. So that's where I first sort of came across IVETA, and then probably it wasn't a couple of years ago, I think, just for networking across the region, Asia and the Pacific, and just trying to keep in touch, I suppose, with what's happening across the region. I do a lot of work. In fact, I focus most of my work on the Pacific region, networking and keeping informed, I suppose.
Lovely. And can you give us some insight into your career background and sort of your areas of expertise?
I didn't actually finish high school, and went on to have a trade. So I was a carpenter, and then not that long, the first interesting thing for me was being asked to go and do some teaching at a TAFE college. Here we call it TAFE, so that's Technical and Further Education here in Australia. And yeah, so that was the first bit surprising, and I guess I just took to it, started teaching, got into compliance, management. 2011, I sort of started my went and did my first international trip, I guess. That's where I sort of got my eyes open to the potentials of vocational education in international development. And I guess since then, I just haven't looked back. I've worked across the Pacific for many years now, and at the moment, I'm based in Australia, working on an exciting project with Pacific Islanders. So yeah, that's kind of where I am now, and yeah, all a bit surprising actually, but certainly it has shown me sort of, I guess, the power of vocational education, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and the potential that high quality education can provide. I suppose still in the Pacific, university is still the preferred pathway, but in the Pacific, the potential is there to pick up for those people that may not be able to follow that university path, whether they can't afford it or whether they don't get high marks in high school, and they can still go on to have really good careers. Managing the project's really quite interesting, and because it's really about empowering the Pacific and aiding them to, I guess, protect their region, with these patrol boats, and yeah, it's really quite interesting. So they come over, we fly them over, we do a lot of training on how they operate and maintain these boats, and then they head back, and every now and then they'll come back and make their way through the courses, and yeah, it's an exciting project.
Definitely massive change from, as you say, being a carpenter, but I suppose all the skills you had there, they're transferable, aren't they? I mean, I would love to.
It's vocational education, that's what it is.
Definitely.
It just yeah, well, it took me out of high school. That was the first benefit. I was not doing well in high school, and now I'm managing a multi-million-dollar contract, so for the government. So yeah, gives hope to anybody, really.
That is very true. That is really cool. But you can't. Yeah, carpentry is massively difficult. So it's not just like it's like a little trade. But anyway, so do you have any recommendations of how IVETA can improve and expand its services to benefit its members? Because we're currently looking at ways that we can sort of make some changes and offer some new services.
I like the conferences. I think that they're a great thing. So I'm not sure about improving, but I think that's a really beneficial. My experience at the Fiji conference in particular was really rewarding, and there's so many talented people around the place to learn from and to network with and share with. So conferences would be one thing. And I think you mentioned a newsletter. I like newsletters. For me, probably you need infographics cartoons or something, but not, not too many words. But newsletters are a good thing to keep up to date with what's happening and around the region. And because at the moment, I mean, Australia's borders only just opened after 2 years. Travel's not too good, I guess. Online is the way it is at the moment.
It might be interesting to actually do a regional newsletter as well. So just specifically, which is actually quite a good idea. So IVETA is currently partnered with Skillman, and we're delivering a series of hot topic webinars. Would you have any suggestions of topics that you might like to see or that you would be interested in?
I guess one thing I think over the years I've noticed what's getting bigger and bigger is compliance. So in Australia in particular, regulatory compliance, so vocational training compliance is a big thing, and rightfully so. What I wouldn't mind is a bit of an investigation of between compliance and quality, if that makes sense. Where sometimes the balance, the balance can get a bit blurry, I suppose. Is not really explaining myself so well, but you can certainly come up with a great compliance system, but it doesn't always mean that the actual quality of these skills outcome is as good as it could be, because you're spending so much time on the compliance system. So that's a topic that's kind of a bit close to my heart, having spent so much time in compliance and then gone out into the Pacific and had a good look at what it's really all about, if that makes sense.
I agree with you. That is really interesting. It's nice to just hear different people's perspectives, because obviously there's some things we just wouldn't even have thought of that actually a lot of people might want to hear. So I'll definitely note that one down. And lastly, could you recommend any sort of institutions or individuals or organizations that you think IVETA can work with?
I mean, my favorite, because I'm in international development in vocational education, my favorites are always the Pacific, quality authorities or training organizations in the Pacific that are developing, they're developing their systems. So to me, and I'm not sure if this is exactly what you meant, but if it's possible to be able to sort of involve them as much as possible in networks and provide support in that way. Now the internet across the Pacific is getting better. A place like the UK has had such high quality vocational education for so many years, but in a lot of the Pacific region, it's still very new. And like I said before, the majority of the community still want to focus on this higher education, university, and all that sort of stuff. So it'd be great to see an organisation like IVETA, reach out to some of those organisations across some of the islands, and that are really reaching out now, really growing. And I think it's the more assistance they could get from organisations like this one would be really beneficial across the region. And then I guess if you're thinking about Australia, it's mainly the TAFEs in Australia, so the technical and further education organisations that benefit from being involved in regional organisations that support vocational education.
That's a really good point, and definitely something we'll look into. So thank you.